Oh, hey guys! Now I want to read a book. Normally, I always read book in silent. That means I read book with my eyes and do not pronounce it with my mouth. But today I want to read my favorite book out loud for you guys to hear. Wave Me Goodbye is my all-time favorite. And of course, we will continue reading chapter 10 by Jacqueline Wilson. Alright, let's get straight into it. But wait, in chapter 9, let's review a little bit. They all went out to the garden to play. And is that gunshot is a bomb from Germany? I don't think so. Well, if you want to know who shoot that gunshot, we will find out in chapter 10 from a very unexpected person. Alright, let's get started. Today I will read super slow and super awesome. Of course, I will need water. I always drink water before I read out loud to practice my pronunciation. Alright. Chapter 10. Run! Said Kevin. For a moment, we both dithered. Run away or run to Archie. We could be shot too, but how could we leave him lying there? We started running towards him. It was difficult to focus when we are moving so fast, but I thought I saw him move his little stick arms. As we got nearer, I saw that he had his hands clasped over his head. Oh, Archie, where are you hurt? I gasped, kneeling down beside him. Any blood? Kevin asked, patting him all over gingerly. Can you take over, little pal? You're tickling, Archie said, wriggling away. Hey, hold still. We need to see where you're hurt. I ain't hurt, he said, scrambling to his feet. See? He held his arms out and turned round, waving them as if he were a windmill. But you fell, I said. But that's what you do, don't you, Kev? Someone takes a pot shot at you. You go down whomp and lie still. I did it right, didn't I? Archie asked eagerly. But that was in our game, you little clot. This was real, a real gun. Some nutter shooting at us, said Kevin. Come on, we'll better make a run for it. Back to the house. A real gun, said Archie in awe. First a real knife, and then a real gun. His eyes shone. Do you think it's German? I asked, squinting into the sunlight, expecting a terrifying army to come goose-stepping out the woods, Hitler at the front, his mustache bristling. I never thought. Maybe the war started, said Kevin, seizing Archie. Come on, grab his other hand. We started running. Archie leaped along between us. Sometimes he lifted his feet and tried to swing himself like a very little kid. Stop that, said Kevin. They could be after us. It was a real shot, wasn't it? We didn't imagine it. It wasn't just something banging. I gasped. I knew just how easily I could carry away and believe anything. But the sound of the gun echoed in my head, and the birds were still circling high above us. It was blooming real, said Kevin, sweat glistening on his forehead. Keep on running, or we could all be goners. He was sticking out of the side of his mouth like an American gangster, which made me want to laugh, but the situation seemed too serious. I wasn't even sure how to get back to the house, and I couldn't see the chimneys through the trees, but luckily, Kevin had a better sense of direction than me. He steered us back to the path, and then we ran even faster. Archie's tight grip on the hand I just hurt properly, but it was all my fault. After all, the braces on my knees hurt too, but I was determined not to lag behind. There's the house, Kevin panted. We charged up to the back door and fell inside. Chubby! Chubby! We all three yelled for her, but the kitchen was empty, though there was a big lump of pastry and some carrots and onions chopped up on the kitchen table, showing she must surely be around somewhere. Chubby! We looked in the pantry, the toilet, then further, empty rooms, and finally the big hallway. Chubby! We listened. The house was silent. Oh, you don't think the Germans came here first and killed Chubby and Mrs. Waverly? I gabbled. I wanted Kevin to tell me it was being soft, but he looked as if he might believe it too. Then we heard footsteps. It wasn't almost like a normal lady. It wasn't Chubby in her flapping slippers. It was Mrs. Waverly, looking almost like a normal lady, fully dressed in pink silk blouse and gray slacks, her long hair tied up neatly. "Good morning, children," she said. "Why all the shouting?" "Oh, Mrs. Waverly, we have to run down the village," I said. "We think the Germans are here." "Well, I don't think that's very likely," she said calmly. "I listened to the news on the radio, and war hasn't been declared yet." "But we heard a gunshot, miss," said Kevin. "That they were shooting at me," added Archie, eyes round. "Really?" said Mrs. Waverly. "It was probably just the farmer who owns the nearby field, scaring the birds away. Young man, why aren't you wearing any clothes? I should run and make a jersey and trousers on before you catch a chill." "Ain't got none," said Archie yearly. "That chubby took them away and gave me her jumper, but I took it off because it was sissy." "Did you now?" said Mrs. Waverly. She looked at Kevin and me. "Have you two brought any other clothes with you?" "I got my jacket and another pair of pants and some socks, miss. Only they're a bit holey," said Kevin. "I'll give a proper fair Isle jumper, but it inches me. I've got my coat and my smock dress for Bess," I said. Wanted her to know that Mom clothed me properly. Mrs. Waverly didn't seem particularly impressed. She was looking at my shoes. "Do you have any walking shoes?" she asked gently. "Well, I walk in these," I said. "I know they need a proper polish." "I think they need a bit more than that," said Mrs. Waverly. "Now run along, children." "But we can't go back outside. No, it's someone firing guns," I said reasonably. "Then you can stay indoors and read one of your books," she said. I thought this was a very sensible suggestion, but Kevin and Archie groaned. "We haven't got any books, Archie and me," said Kevin. "Perhaps Shirley will be a kind girl and you have hers. She seemed to have a little library tucked in her suitcase," said Mrs. Waverly. "Off you go now." "I want Chubby," said Archie. "Yeah, do you think she's all right?" "She's not in the kitchen. She's not anywhere," I said. Mrs. Waverly didn't seem at all worried. "I expect she'll out pulling up vegetable for her lunch or busy doing the housework," she said briskly. She already got carrots and onions and it would be difficult doing houseworks in a series of totally empty rooms. But Mrs. Waverly seemed so calm that I decided not to worry about Chubby or her whereabouts. "Come on," I said to Kevin and Archie. "You can each choose a book." "Have you got any comics?" Kevin asked hopefully as they strayed upstairs after me. "Mom won't let me have comics, apart from the Chick's own when I was little," I said regretfully. Kevin snorted. He seemed even less impressed when I got every book out of my suitcase. "I'm not reading them," he said, not even bothering to look at them properly. "They're all girly books." "I'm not reading either," said Archie. It was obvious he couldn't actually read at all, because he held Orlando upside down when he gave it to him. "This way up," I said. "See, it's a story about a lovely big ginger cat. He's called Orlando." "Orlando?" Kevin mocked. "That's a stupid name for a cat. You call them Muggy or Tittles or Sooty, not blooming Orlando." "Well, this cat called Orlando, and he has a wife called Grace, and they have 3 little kittens, Blanche, Pansy, and Tinkle," I said slowly like a teacher, trying to interest Archie, but he simply sniggered at the last name, and so did Kevin. The name Tinkle. "This is a stupid story," Archie rudely divulged into my suitcase and found Timmy Ted tucked in a corner, where I'd hidden him. "I want a story about him," he said, making Timmy dance about on his soft little paws. "Well, hard luck, but there isn't one," I said. "Tell me about it in your own head. That's what my auntie does." "All right," I said, rather flattered. "Sit down properly then." Archie sat down and made Timmy jump up and down on his knee. "Look, he's excited. He wants to hear the story too," he said. "And me, and Kevin. Count me out." "I want to hear a stupid baby story about a teddy," Kevin said. But he sat down too, biting his nails. "Once upon a time," I started. "What?" Archie interrupted. "What does that mean?" "It is the way you start a story. Now shh and listen." I said, "Once upon a time." There was a little bear called Timmy, and he lived in a bear cave in London with his auntie. Did he really? Is this true? Archie asked excitedly. Of course it's not true, you twerp, said Kevin. Bears don't live in London. How many bears have you seen prowling the pavements? It is so true, I said. Timmy and his auntie live in London Zoo, so there is a special cave in some rocks. Lots of children come and see them every day. Timmy liked the children because sometimes they threw him buns. His auntie said he shouldn't eat them because they might make him sick. But Timmy didn't listen. He ate buns all day long. All different kinds. He liked to lick a sugary bit of the top first, and then he went gobble, gobble, gobble the bun part. Gobble, 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 Archie repeated, giggling, making Timmy gobble of his Kevin's protruded ears. Get up, said Kevin, swatting him. Timmy was a very happy little bear, though he was sometimes naughty, and his auntie had to smack him. I continued, smack, smack, smack. Smack, 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 said Archie, and he made Timmy bend over to get his bottom royally smacked. But then one day, the zoo was surprisingly quiet. Timmy looked out the bear cave in surprise. All the animals were in their cages, as usual, but there were no visitors, not even a single child. The zookeeper came along and said the zoo was shut because there was going to be a war. Uh-oh, said Kevin. So what happened? Does he get bombed and shot? Is he dead now? Archie asked, clutching Timmy. No, of course not, because Timmy and all the other young animals were evacuated. I said, on a train? Yes, just like us, on a train. Animals on a train? Archie asked. Yes. It was quite a struggle getting them all on. The great big elephant had to have carriage all to himself. He didn't squash Timmy, did he? No, I said. The elephant sat by himself. Timmy sat with 3 other animals. Who were they? Well, there was a little baby monkey called Archie. Me! That's like me! I'm a baby monkey! Archie said, capering on the room, scratching under his arms. And there was a Kevin monkey and Shirley monkey. But there was a Kevin giraffe with a long, long neck. He had to stick his head out the window because it wouldn't fit inside. I don't want to be a giraffe. I'll be a lion, Kevin insisted. You can't. It's my story and I gotta say who people are. Well, who are you? You're a bit rubbish as a lion. You're a bit scary, said Kevin. I tried hard to think what I could be. I fancy being a deer like the one I seen this morning, but I wasn't sure they kept deer in the zoo. What was the name of the African animal like a deer that was meant to be very graceful? I'm Shirley Gazelle, I announced, and ran around the room in a belly version of gazelle, whirling and leaping and holding in my imaginary horns high. I was furious when Kevin and Archie roared with laughter. Stop it! Stop laughing at me! I shouted. Well, stop acting so daft, said Kevin, prancing around like a twerp. It was a ballet dance. I can't have it if you're both too stupid to like ballet. Now clear up, both of you. Get out of my room. Go on, go away. No, go on with the story. Timmy wants to know what happened next. Archie begged. I snatched Timmy away from him. He's my Timmy. Now push off, I said. I was trembling with humiliation and anger. I didn't want her to see us, so I thrust my hands in my pocket. Watch out! She's got a knife, Kevin said. And he grabbed Archie by the wrist and pulled him quickly out of the room, slamming the door behind them. I had meant to threaten them, but was rather glad they had come to that conclusion. I sat down beside my suitcase, wrapping my arms around myself. I was still trembling. I wanted Mom. I remember the stamp postcard at the bottom of my gas mask case. I fished it out, along with a pencil. I wrote in tiny letters so I fit as much on the card as possible, next to Mom's address. Here is Shirley's card. Mrs. Waverly Red House, halfway uphill, Meadow Ridge. Dear Mom, this is a horrid place. I don't want to come home. There are 2 boys living here too, and you wouldn't like them one bit, as they're very silly and rough and call me names. There isn't any furniture in my room, not even a bed, so I have to sleep on the floor. There are two ladies who live here too, but they're a bit odd. One's little and very bossy, and the other's very dreamy, and maybe not all there. We don't have a proper meals, just bread and milk and an egg. Please can come home. This isn't a safe place because the Germans are here already and shoot at us. Love from Shirley. XXX. I took it back in my gas mask case, ready to post. Then I rolled over my tummy on the hard wooden floor and read ballet shoes. When my eyes eventually got blurry, I shut them and pretended that Pauline and I were acting out a story. And Petrova and I were detecting Germans with our knives, and Posey and I were dancing up and down the long landing in red shoes. Then someone came running after us, clatter, 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 and banged hard on all the doors and started yelling at us, "Shirley!" Archie came rushing into my room in his pants and his lace-up shoes. "Shirley, it's dinner time! Chubby's been calling us. Hurry, or she'll put in a big pin." "She hasn't got a pig," I murmured. I wasn't that bothered about dinner, especially if it was only bread and milk. But when I followed Archie out of my room, I sniffed the most wonderful savory smell wafting up from the kitchen. What is it?" "Chubby said it's pie," said Archie, rubbing its tummy. "Let's hurry." I thought we would be eating in the kitchen again, but Chubby had set the table in the dining room that led of Mrs. Waverley's sitting room. It didn't have much furniture, only a long table with embroidered cloth and 6 chairs, but there were paintings on the wall. They were landscapes, some pale watercolors, other border oil paintings. I stared at the green hill that featured in all of them. Sometimes it was bright and sunny, sometimes gray and cold. There was a sunrise and also very dark. Night time with one crescent moon. It was always the same hill, whatever the day of the day or season, and I was pretty sure the same it was very hill we were on, painted from several different angles. I looked carefully, but I couldn't see Mrs. Waverley horse in any of them. "Don't just stand there gawping," said Chubby, bustling in one dish of potato and another of carrots. "I need you to polish the water glasses and bring them in sharpest. And you, young Archie, stop bobbing about in your nothings. What you done with my jumper? Never mind. Go and grab a towel around yourself. Your own clothes aren't dry yet." I found the glasses in my kitchen and gave them a rub over with a tea towel, peering at the big golden pie on its serving plate. The pastry were elaborately fluted and carefully pricked so that little bursts of aromatic steam rose out of its depth. Kevin was hovering beside it, running his finger around the rim. "Well, a little gravy had leaked. It tastes so yummy," he said. "Watch out! Chubby will have your guts for gutters if she see you licking her precious pie," I said, though I itched to do the same. "Where are we in the dining room? It's such a bother carrying all this stuff in there. Mrs. Waverley having dinner with us. We have to mind our P's and Q's, whatever they are. Stuff like not taking with her mouth full. I'm not doing any ticking at all. She doesn't like me. She looks as if she looks at me like a bad smell." I said Kevin. "No, she doesn't. Although she did actually. She's gonna send me packing. I know it." "No, she's not." I tried to sound convincing. "She only let me stay last night because you begged her." Kevin paused. "Could you beg me her again, sure?" "Surely. All right. I'll if she said anything about you going, but she won't. Here, let me polish these glasses. No fear. I only dropped one. I'm not clumsy," he said. I saw what he meant. I went into the kitchen to fetch the salt and pepper pots, and somehow managed to that one side so that it fell on the tile floor with an alarming bang. The bump came out of the bottom and salt erupted all over the place. But luckily, the silver pot wasn't even dented. Kevin tried to scoop the salt back inside with its fingertips. "Don't! The floor will be covered in dust and germs," I squealed. "Let's find some fresh salt." I delved into the pantry. The shelves were very partially occupied, and it was easy enough to find a packet of salsa. I stuck it carefully into the pot and then popped the bung back in. "There, good as new," I said proudly. "Hey, thanks, Shirley," said Kevin. "You're okay, you are, for a girl." I giggled, weirdly pleased. I still didn't really like Kevin, but I couldn't help being pleased that he seemed to like me now. Come on, you two. What are you doing? Making cows out of each other? Said Chubby, busting in. Scoot! I'm about to serve up the pie. We were all given extraordinarily large slices. Country portion. Chubby called them proudly. We had to cap ourselves to carrots and potatoes, which was another deal for Kevin, and totally beyond for Archie. Mrs. Goverley sat at one end of the table and attempted light conversation, though we also have concentrated on the pie. It was the most delicious thing I've ever tasted. The pasty were crisp and golden on top and yet soft and yielding underneath. The gravy was thick and savory and silky on the tongue. The carrots and onions were added interest and color to each mouthful, but it was the meat that made the pie so superb. I've never eaten such tender, delicious meat in my life. I couldn't work out what it was. Mom and Dad and I sometimes have a roast dinner on Sunday, but this meat wasn't dark and strong enough for beef. Was it pork? I knew you could get pork pies, but I wish they were little humpy pies with pink minced meat eaten cold. I ate up every scrap on my plate and laid my knife and fork down neatly together, the way Mom had taught me. Mrs. Waverly looked at me approvingly. I had the courage to smell her, and Chubby too. That was the most wonderful pie. I gushed. What was the meat? I've never had it before, just it's so lovely. It was just rabbit, she said. My smile tense. I gave a silly little giggle, thinking she was joking. Not a rabbit, I said. Of course it was. Didn't you hear me go out and shoot it with my shotgun this morning? I'm a crack shot, even though I said so myself. We always have rabbit pie on Saturday. It's the one meal we don't have to bother the butcher for. We've got hundreds of little beasts running wild, said Chubby. No, not that little gray rabbits with the fluffy white tails, I stammered. What other kinds are there? After the tail I chopped off. Do you want it for pom-pom on your hat? Chubby asked. I stared at her, my heart beating. I thought of the rabbit I've seen. It might be the very rabbit inside me now, chopped into little bits and drowned in gravy. My stomach heaved. It felt as if it was growling inside me. Murderer, I gasped, and I was sick all over my empty plate. And that's the end of chapter 10. If you want to know what might happen when Shirley is sick all over her, then we have to look at chapter 11. Looks like they're going somewhere in chapter 11. Let's find out. And poor Shirley, she now know that the pie was rabbit pie. Not good at all for killing a rabbit. So bye guys. See you tomorrow for chapter 11. Bye.